Should we believe even if it isn't true? Ayaan Hirsi Ali has left Islam 20 years ago, became an atheist, and then left atheism and went to Christianity. She has a lot to say in her writings, and it makes me have all sorts of things to say myself. But should we believe even if it's not true? What's really interesting is I saw this Lex Friedman episode a long time ago about what made Homo sapiens win against the Neanderthal. And Homo sapiens, we evolved to be able to unify under the same concepts. We could come together more than 50 in a group, and really we could come in mass numbers, collective numbers that are just beyond what any other primates were able to do. And we would be able to do that under one umbrella or idea. Empires and kingdoms were something unique to us compared to the rest of the primate kingdom. And a lot of that would be connected politically, but also ideologically under certain deities that they had geographic locations. I mean, what I'm trying to say is you can show how invented and man-made from the very earliest writings, pre-history, down into history, all of it's man-made. All of these religions, that's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, you name it, they're all man-made. And I know this. This is not I felt in my heart an experience that can be explained through neuroscience and all of the various things that humans, as well as other animals, experience. Placebo and serotonin and chemicals that obviously will be triggered when you're hearing messages that convey that natural primate instinct of mother, father in nature to the human, the child, the infant. We're crying out in worship, reaching up, asking the Heavenly Father to grab us in his arms, his son to hold us with warm embrace as he died on the cross, and his Father, our God, is sniffing the sweet aroma of the death of the sacrifice of his son, because sacrifices, burnt offerings, were food to the gods. And we can know this. You can read and learn and say, oh, holy crap, there's a great book by Francesca Stavrakopoulou, God and Anatomy, where she breaks down the ancient Near East and shows you that way before the Bible, this is exactly how the gods operated, gods plural. And you find this even in the Bible over and over. Did you notice that when Noah got off the flood after the flood waters receded, the first thing he does is take one of those animal ark creatures and makes a burnt offering to God. It says that the sweet aroma went into his nose and it changed his heart toward mankind. He was trying to annihilate them all other than Noah. And then he was like, I'm never doing that again. Because that barbecue that Noah just made was just unbearably good. I have to have that again. That is not original to the Bible. You find this with Enki and Ea, and you find this in the previous myths, all the way in the earliest writings in Mesopotamia. This is exactly what we see. And they did the same thing. They wanted to annihilate these loud, rowdy humans, and then eventually a sacrifice was made, and they came together at that dinner table. Never do that again. Let's not kill all humans again. Let's not do that. You can see how man-made it is. So when I find out that the ex-Muslim famous new atheist, what's her name, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, has become a Christian, and she says so, really, she thinks that it's the Western story. She thinks that Western civilization is going to collapse. So she's purposefully indulging into this. Maybe she's feeling something missing. I've speculated in my mind, maybe because of her ex-Muslim, experience. And she explains how radical that version of Islam really was. And I kind of wonder, and I'm just throwing this out there, if the recent events that have happened in the war with the Middle East have played a significant role. And I wonder if certain people on the left that are more liberal, that are more secular, that are atheist, that are maybe taking a stand against Israel. I'm not getting into that here. I'm just making the point. They're making the stand against Israel, and she sees how extreme Hamas is they wrote about this in their actual documents of trying to annihilate the Jews and hatred for the Jews. And of course, jihad with its interpretation in their context being warfare and death and all the above. They'll go to heaven if they die in combat. By the way, this isn't unique to Islam. Christian martyrs and Christian crusaders had the same concept of dying in battle and going directly to heaven and stuff. So it isn't unique to Islam, is all I'm saying. Yes, they call it jihad, but just as you go into the history, you start realizing these humans had all sorts of ideas that they came up with. Should we believe if it's not true? So you start to realize, oh my gosh, there's certain morals that we today in the West could say have Judeo-Christian roots. Okay. You know what? Damn it, you got me, David Wood. You got me, man. You got me, Ruslan. You got me, man. The 6 points of the end times and stuff. Dude, those videos are really like, I got to do some responses to you, man. Just to poke holes and show you why I think it failed. The apocalyptic expectations of the first century did not happen. They tried to date set, change dates, try to reinterpret. Day is 1,000 years. They're getting at all sorts of pickles. John chapter 21, I mean, it talks about that they thought that he was never going to die, but that's what some of the rumors said. He never said that. And they're trying to solve the problem for why some of you standing here will not taste death till the Lord comes in his glory with his angels to repay each man according to his deeds, the kingdom and all that. And Christians want to say the kingdom is actually this thing that happened at Pentecost or the transfiguration or whatever they want to do. There's always some way in which they try to make sense of this. Should we believe it if it's not true? What should we believe? If that's not true, what should we believe? I'm saying it's not true. But I understand you creating a story or having a story that people can unite under. So I imagine she, as she's leaving her atheism and trying to find unity in what she thinks is what made progress in the West, which, goodness gracious, there's so much to read and show why actually getting away from that whole literalist perspective. Many of the founding fathers were deists. It was getting away from these. It was the secular post-enlightenment values that start to help us get away from things like slavery, women's rights and stuff. This was not a Christian doctrine. The Christian doctrine tells your woman to shut her mouth in church and to learn from her husband. And women, cover your heads because the demon angels who had sex in Genesis 6 might come down and rape you. Okay, this is Paul's teachings. You want to reinterpret it? Go right ahead because you've been doing it for 2,000 years. I understand. It's not just Christians. It's also the way translators have dealt with this material. Jews have done the same thing with their material. And it goes on and on. Okay. It's just the way it is. Islam, right? Muslims do the same thing with their early sources. They can't get along with each other. There's all sorts of hell. So then I have to ask, and I'm asking for myself, and I'm also asking the Christian apologist online. And, I'm asking you a question. I don't know if you can fairly answer this and truly give me a significant, reasonable response that makes sense. Curious to know. If Christianity is not true, which it isn't, but for the sake of argument here, because you're going to deny that and try and make cases, a million plus cases to say that it's not a man-made religion, that God really did raise his son from the dead and all that stuff, which I think is not true. I think it's legend, it's myth, it's made up, it's fable. It's not true. And I'm saying it's not true. If it's not true, which goes contrary to your core values and everything you believe, then what should we believe? It looks like she buckled and went with something because I don't think she sees how it's going to win in her eyes to be secular, atheist, and maybe she was truly losing out on her purpose or meaning or value in life. And trust me, I'm a human. I think of things like death more often now than I ever did as a Christian. I feel like as a Christian, when I was a believer, I was so I'm going to heaven, it's okay, that I didn't really think about death and how that even mattered. Now that I'm not, I have more time to think about, I think, serious things like death and what am I leaving for my children and how I'm going to live my life now and things like that. In my mind, that's important. But it seems that when I'm asking this question, that I don't know if I can get a true answer that makes sense. I'm asking for more of a realistic narrative based on what we now know, based on the most up-to-date information, not some guy who died on a cross that was theologized or mythologized and his father smelt the sweet aroma of his sacrifice in some way and sense that Christians think, yeah, this is true. He died on our behalf and stuff. That myth, it unites Christians. The myth that we see in Islam unites Muslims. The myth we see in Judaism unites them. Nationalism can be seen as a myth, a constructed story of a nation, whatever the nation may be, unites them under one story, under one purpose, under one ideology, and under one goal. So what should one believe if one sees all of these religions are man-made, some worse than others? Personally, I think that Islam is behind in terms of it's getting where it needs to go, but it's going to take some time. And I think it's behind on that curve. I don't know what it's going to take to get it to where at least Christianity is coming out of that. But Christians see this whole thing as a win right now in terms of like seeing an atheist come over. How many atheists are being made? Serious question. How many Christians are seeing this isn't true and are leaving and are going to more secular humanist perspectives because they realize that the walls going down of barriers between us and the construction of made up ideas? We are all human. We're all part of the same family. We all literally evolved on the same planet with the rest of not just humankind, but also the animals. Why is it that we can't construct something new or a new idea that could put an umbrella where everybody can try and find something that matches them under it? Instead, we got to go back to something that has evolved and is not the same as it was when it first started. And by the way, it first started, there's several versions of Christianity out the gate competing with itself. That doesn't get stamped out for centuries to figuring out what the orthodox versions are and the divisions between East and West, and the list can go on and on. And Christianity did not start these moral ideas that Christians love to assume. I had this conversation with Ruslan in text message, but this is stuff that David Wood and guys like that try to really nail down as if Christianity has it all. Has it all. Christianity borrowed their ideas from the Greeks and the Romans, and of course, Jewish predecessors, because the earliest Christians were Jews. So they're coming through that vein, but then you have to open up the world to the Goyim, to the Goy, to the Gentiles, to the ethne in the Greek. Well, okay. Now we're dealing with a people who are not Jews flooding into this thing over time and bringing some of those concepts. But those concepts right out the gate, Paul teaches in his letters, match quite well in many ways to a Hellenistic world because he became all things to all men. He had to use these ideas in order to get it. But he also seemed to believe in these things with the pneuma and how that had real deep pedigree into the philosophers of Stoicism and Platonism. Even the early church fathers had to say, oh, you know, actually Aristotle was probably a Christian. Not probably. He was a Christian because how did he know these things except divine revelation of the Logos? And this insight had to have come from God. I really find that ironic that the first people who get this teaching and these ideas come to the Greeks, people who have clear polytheistic myth and storytelling from Heracles to you name it of their figures. They're the ones who get this idea first. Then there's combating that takes place later among them. Who got it first, Plato or Moses? And so there's this idea of whether or not Moses and Plato borrowed from Moses and stuff, never mentioning the Logos, but there's all these ideas of like who came first, who had pedigree. The Pythagoreans are arguing against the Platonists, and they're trying to say that we are up and Plato's down and vice versa. This stuff never ends. Should we believe it if it's not true? You know, sometimes we make up white lies for family or for kids, and we do it because we know what's best for them and we want to try and help them. We think this is going to guide them in the right way. You know, sometimes we do it for fun. Sometimes we talk about Santa Claus, which we know is made up. kids believe, and they live in the fictive, mythical world. But one day they grow up and realize Santa wasn't real, and they got to live in the real world. Can we find something that helps unify us that isn't these ancient myths? Or must we believe them even if we don't believe them? Or must we indulge and say we participate and practice them in order to, what? Keep Western civilization up? That's the idea that I think has just recently happened with the atheist that left and became Christian, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And I got to look at her name because you know what's funny? I never even knew who she was till all the Christian apologists were over here going, yeah, hey, yeah, we got to win. And it's like, what? Who is this? So I guess she's part of the new atheist movement. I read one of her Why I'm a Christian, and she left Why I'm Not an Atheist or something like that, she said, over against Burton Russell, and then talks about her past as a Muslim and how extreme the Muslim Brotherhood and her teachings were as a Muslim and the hate for Jews she had, which makes me think that maybe some of that stuff in the Middle East and the way that people in the West have kind of treated the situation, not really really condemning what happened on October the 7th, but only trying to look for nuance and not really just outright condemning it. I imagine that probably triggered her as well. She's probably like, hell no, because that's naturally how I felt. Like, not saying going to Christianity, but naturally felt this, like, why are people who are claiming to be rational, educated, atheist skeptics who are liberal in their ideas morally and ethically over here rooting? And I'm not talking about pro-Palestine, people who wish, they have their stuff there. I'm talking about people who are outright in support of Hamas, praising Hamas. I actually saw, just so you know, videos that were circulating from some of the professors who actually had them online from what was happening after October the 7th. And they were chopping people's heads off on camera with garden hose, laughing and taking sticks and ripping the eyes out of the person's sockets. They did things that you can't describe, undescribable. That should be without any but, if, and, or anything condemned, period. There shouldn't even be a question on how wrong that was. There shouldn't be, period. But I guess there is. And that might have triggered her. That may have made her go, you know what? We're heading down a path where, like, extremist ideologies that would behead you if you were practicing queer or anything along these ideas, they would kill you. And what wrong turn did these people take that they would, like, be pro these people who are literally, and I'm talking about Hamas, who are the literal, like, people out here committing these atrocities over against these civilians. And she's probably thinking, I got to get further away from Islam. And if the liberals and the left in the West are, like, holding hands, singing Kumbaya with Muslims who are cheering on the total wipeout of the people of Israel and wanting them to be completely removed from the land, hey, I got to get further away from these people because now they're over here in cahoots with the very people I left at the beginning. Well, who do I go to? Oh, I'm going to go to the Christians. That's what I think might be happening with her. But should we go to Christianity if it's not true? This is the question. It's almost like, I imagine she feels like this is a battle she can't win because she has to go to this thing that and purposely push herself into the idea that maybe there's some magical being outside space and time, not knowing the history or the context or the culture in its cultural historical context, understanding the evolution of the God and all of this religion is man-made. Not really knowing that. I can't imagine she's read all this material and then would come and become a Christian. I don't see how, unless she's purposefully identifying with a group and then playing make-believe. So for those Christians out there who might be listening to me today, recognizing I don't believe this is true at all, and let's just pose a question. Say I ask you, since I don't believe Christianity is true at all, What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? What if this lady, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, comes out and goes, all right, in like a few months, she goes, look, Christianity is a myth, but I gotta believe it because Western society, in her mind somehow, is just going to collapse. And there's a pedigree of Western society that's been Christian for so long. And well, technically it's that or it's Islam, because I can't choose to go over here to these people who are rooting and being pro-Hamas in some way or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. Like, would you as Christians just accept her if she thought that everything you guys taught wasn't true, pick and chose some of the morals, but just decided, hey, I don't believe this? No. And by the way, it's not the Christians or Christian morals and ethics that gave us women's rights, that gave us the whole eradication of slavery and stuff. No. Post-Enlightenment ideas in a secular world, people who were deists, who brought in this whole republic that we have, modeling it off of not only some of the Judeo-Christian ideas, but also Greek and Roman, Plato, the Republic of Rome. And if you don't know that, well, I can't help you. So there's a lot going on with this whole notion. And I guess just to ask you, I don't believe in Christianity at all. But are you saying that I should play make-believe? Well, no, because you honestly believe it's true if you're a Christian apologist. And I don't know what the hell's going on in Ayaan Hirsi Ali's head. But I can tell you this, once you know these are man-made, once you see they're man-made, the idea of playing make-believe on purpose just to try and unite more humans, I know it's an uphill battle trying to get people to wake up, because it's easier to believe in something. In my opinion, it's easier to believe in something than not, at least cognitively. It takes some real thinking to think outside of superstition, to think outside of the emotions and understanding more science and more of the history of what's going on. It's not easy to rationally find ways out of these things. Very difficult. It took a lot of time and a lot of research for me to come to the conclusions I do. It's an uphill battle, but I think that if we all did these things, we would be better equipped on understanding the human plight and understanding reality better, which could help us then come into a narrative we could create, we could help construct, that would help unify us without having to go to these ancient Abrahamic faiths that seem to dominate our world, and the ideologies that are so, in a way, coercive, or at least manipulative, mentally and psychologically abusive at times, and at times even at the end of the sword or the end of a gun. And that's still today in many places of the world. So I know it's an uphill battle, but I feel like if we educate more people to seeing what it is, what do you think? To those who are skeptics out there, to those who don't believe, help me out. This is me venting to you, just expressing my 2 cents after I saw a video that David Wood did on how Christianity is superior to atheism. And I saw that Matt Dillahunty actually said something really interesting on Facebook, because, he's on the atheist side. And let me pull that up here, because it might be worth bringing up what Matt says here. I think he says something unique. It's Matt Dillahunty, I think. Yeah, there we go. And he made a comment about her that I thought was interesting before we wrap up this video, if I can find it. All right. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is now Christian, not because there's evidence for the truth of Christianity, but because her time as an atheist failed to combat her nihilism. And she feels the utility of Christianity can better combat woke ideology and Islamism. So I feel like maybe she's equating woke ideology with people who are in bed with Islamism. I don't know. I don't know her particular views. Not remotely surprised, Matt says, after leaving Ayaan's keynote speech at 2015 American Atheist Convention and repeatedly seeing her spread talking points from the right-wing think tank, I realized that while she was an atheist, she wasn't a humanist and was primarily looking for a way to combat Islamism. Okay, so this is Matt That's probably why I'm seeing the same thing here. I mentioned this to Beth, whoever that is. Humanism and right-wing thinking just don't go together. And because of that, she wasn't ever going to find a good fit with a broader atheist community. 1 year later, in 2016, Terresa McBain, who had been thrust into the atheist spotlight at the 2012 Reason rally, returned to her former faith because she missed the music. And perhaps because she lied on her resume and needed to slip off into more comfortable environments. Some people fall into atheism because some religious ideology failed them, but that same religion also sets expectation that atheism can't. Nothing can, because the expectations aren't tied to reality. That's an interesting way of saying that, Matt, if you watch this, because in my understanding, that is exactly, they give you this fictitious abracadabra, you're going to live forever. You're going to go to heaven. It's going to be amazing. Oh, and if you don't, you're going to go to hell, for many of them. And then you say atheism has never been the solution. It's merely a facet of the solution, along with skepticism and humanism. I love how you said that. I saw some of my friends who chatted below on that. There's some really good comments down there. But yeah, this is a really good point. And I think if we replaced it with secular humanism and realizing the equality of humans, both sexes, various genders, you name it, we broke down these walls, we wouldn't have these problems. But I also do think that stepping up and seeing the extremism that is in Islam, as you have, Matt, and you've been debating some of the idiots out there like Daniel Hakikachu, kudos to you for tolerating that debate as much as you did. Wow. This just gets crazier and crazier. What do you think in the comment section? Tell me your thoughts. I'm curious to see. But this is a win to some. Like, this person left. People are leaving Christianity. Insane amounts of people are leaving Christianity. Like, it's wild. So this idea that this is a win because she's a really well-known name, I guess, because I never knew about her. Of course they're gonna be happy to see that. And then there's going to be other people who are going to leave Christianity, and there's going to be people who are going to become Christians. There's going to be people who are going to become Muslims, and there's going to be people who are going to leave Islam, and they're going to. This is just the way the human process works. I love you. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Tell me your thoughts. I'm curious to hear what you think. And never forget, we are Myth Vision.